We're here on another episode of Wealth Beyond Numbers. We continue the conversation with Dr. Ray Tolmos. And today we really want to discuss trends in healthcare, trends that you see in your practice. I know technology has thrown a curveball on every industry
Yeah,
nowadays.
big time.
And I would say it's a necessary evil. I mean, AI is here to stay, in my opinion. We use AI in our practice to be more efficient, to be more effective, to do research for us.
Right.
I'm sure that now even clients do their own self-diagnosis nowadays with AI or look for things that are
ChatGPT.
happening in themselves. Rightfully so, and not. But what's the biggest trend that you see in your industry right now?
Well, besides self-diagnosis, that's always been the trend. It's just now it's kind of on steroids with the ChatGPT. But
Hmm.
as far as the biggest trends right now, and it's something that we've been doing for a few years, is peptides. Peptides are just blowing up everywhere, across the board. I mean, I can't open my phone without some sort of a peptide, advertisement or module or video or something coming up. And the scary part about it is that so many people are getting into it without really knowing it, understanding it, researching it. They see it as a financial opportunity, which it very well can be, but at the same time, there's so much unknown and there's so many risk factors that are associated with it that you got to be careful who you see regarding these peptides. And I definitely don't recommend doing them on your own, even with ChatGPT, simply because of the fact that the long-term studies for some of them, they don't really look at some of the risk factors. The evidence is kind of more like, all right, well, if A and B equals, this, then if we transform that over to how that would work in a human, then this should, in theory, work. But there isn't much actual human clinical data published on how these peptides have effects in our body, and kind of it's more like conceptual evidence that we have, right? Like, well, if it raises growth hormone levels, then it's probably good for us, but we don't really know if raising growth hormone levels via these peptides is actually good for us based on long-term studies.
Mm.
So there's a few situations where peptides are contraindicated. Some people may be overlooking that if they have a 2 hour certification,
Oh, wow.
in those exist, by the way. Yeah,
Wow.
like offer peptides in your clinic within the next 48 hours and we'll get you kicked up off of the ground, and so it's scary on that side of things because there is so much information out there regarding that. Um, but you can tell. I mean, you watch one video and it's going to tell you one thing, you watch another video, it's going to tell you something different. So, for me, when I'm trying to help patients out, and if they're interested in peptides, I'll always say, let's make sure that all of our ducks are in a line first, and then we can see if there is a peptide that would have the impact that we're looking to create on you. And sometimes they can be very beneficial. I use them a lot for people with autoimmune conditions, people dealing with chronic, injuries, pain, like arthritis, those kinds of things. There are some peptides that are excellent for that. We look at actual labs that help tell us to understand if people are aging faster than they should. And then at that point, we can look at, okay, would the anti aging peptides be beneficial for them? And is there anything that we may not want to, any reason why we may not want to administer this anti aging peptide? So first of all, it's make sure that there's no risk or minimal risk and that the reward is worth that risk. And then, second of all, how do we apply that? How do we test it? How do we know that we're making the impact that we should, besides just subjective, oh, I feel better, I sleep better? I want to see the data. I want to see the numbers that are going to prove that. So, peptides are definitely the biggest trend at this point.
Are these the type of tests that you mentioned, things that you're not really doing them with your traditional doctor? These are more specific tests that you have to do
Yes,
to
yes.
look for certain things.
Yes. So some of them, for example, the one of the biggest ones right now are the growth hormone releasing peptides. So tesamorelin, ipamorelin, sermorelin, anything that ends in a morelin, is are very popular right now. The reason is because as we age, we lose three things. One of those things is growth hormone. Our IGF-1 score, insulin like growth factor 1, tells us about how our body is secreting growth hormone. As we age, that number declines. When we run a certain test with Quest, which can be covered by insurance, we get something called a Z score, which compares you to other people of your same age and sex. If you are negative in that number, you're aging faster. than your peers. If you are positive, well, we want to make sure you're not too positive because as growth hormone implies, it could be growing cells, and maybe we don't want to grow certain cells, like if you have a tumor in your body. So, there's contraindications, of course, and there's keeping these numbers within certain limits. It's one of those things where there's clinics that will just say, "Oh yeah, you want it? Here you go. You got it." And they'll just charge you for it and you'll take it. But what if your growth hormone levels are already more than what they should be? Number one, you're wasting your money because there's not going to be any positive impact there. Number two, you're increasing your risk for growing cancer cells or any other cells that maybe don't need to be growing.
Wow. Yeah, because sometimes I even see advertising other things besides the peptides, like IV therapy
Oh
or
yeah.
hormones or testosterone. And
That's another big area that's very shady, very money driven. Like I have men come in to see me all the time and they tell me, "Doc, my testosterone is, it's bad." And we'll run their numbers and their testosterone levels are not really bad. It's fatigue, it's other issues that are playing a role here. It could be emotional problems, traumas that have happened, whatever the case is. But rarely is it actually a testosterone problem. And if you just inject yourself with a whole bunch of testosterone and have superhuman numbers, yeah, you're probably going to notice a difference. But is that healthy? Are you neglecting the reason why you feel that way in the first place? That's really what I try to help people to figure out. And oftentimes, just by doing nothing for testosterone, but by addressing our daily habits, our diet, our exercise, our actual health by looking at these numbers, we see testosterone levels naturally go up on their own, which is the goal because the body is then regulating that instead of an injection.
what if, so I guess it's a case by case scenario, but
100%.
what if you do take care of your health, you eat healthy or you try, um, and you still feel the fatigue? Then there may be other underlying issues happening.
Definitely. It could even
That could be
be
genetic, could, that's you mentioned
genetics.
before.
Genetics can play a role, definitely. But there could be nutrient deficiencies, right? There could be absorption problems. Maybe you're eating a great diet, but you have problems with absorption in your intestines. You have something called leaky gut. You very may well still be deficient in something, and you might have other immune system issues that are causing inflammation that are also taking away from your body to its ability to produce energy, as I mentioned earlier. Maybe spending that energy on other things instead of helping you feel good.
And is that where the peptides will come in, or maybe supplements, vitamins,
Right.
or
Supplements, vitamins, IV therapy, all those things can be helpful. So when I do have people with really severe leaky gut, there are peptides that we use. One of them is BPC 157. This helps with repairing connective tissue. Another one called KPV. This one helps. It's an anti-inflammatory, so we can reduce and modulate the inflammation from the immune system, so that the gut has an opportunity to heal. Um, if they are dealing with fatigue, we may also look at assessing their NAD levels. NAD is how our body produces ATP, which is where energy, it's literally cellular energy. As we age, NAD also declines. So we can test their NAD levels with a finger prick and we can see, are you low on that? If they are, we can look at either doing precursors in supplement form, like NMN or nicotinamide riboside. These things are all good. Or we can actually administer IVs. Um, the trouble with NAD IVs is that they take a very long time. So NAD is an extracellular or an intracellular molecule. So your body, when it's outside of your cells, your body freaks out. Your body's like, wait a minute, are all my cells blowing up right now?
mm,
So you get nauseous, you start to feel palpitations, like your body literally feels very bad. So we have to administer that drip extremely, extremely slow. Normal IV therapy drip, 20 to 30 minutes. NAD drip, we're looking at 2, sometimes even 3 hours, depending on the patient's tolerance.
well,
So we actually have a new product called Niagen, which is a precursor for it, but it actually raises the NAD levels more than NAD itself because it crosses that border into the cell much easier, where the body can then convert it into the NAD much more efficiently. And it's supposed to be outside of the cells, so your body doesn't freak out the same way. So we still slow that one down a little bit, but that one is about 45 minutes compared to 2 to 3 hours.
wow. And so you mentioned the side effects. What are now the other side, the benefits from it?
Oh, well, every process in our body requires energy, right? So when we go to bed at night, it's healing, regenerating, taking care of all the stress that happened that day. And then if we have time to kind of go back and work on the things that have been building up, like that ache in your shoulder or, whatever it is that's going on. So if we have more of that energy available to us, well, then we can heal faster. We can create cells faster. We can produce antioxidants faster. We can suppress viruses faster. We can do everything at a more efficient level.
Wow. Um, so sleeping is not just the only thing that we can do to help us to regenerate ourselves and get our energy back.
Right.
There are
Yeah.
other things that we can do.
Definitely. So, regenerative medicine is another one of the really kind of big topics that a lot of people are getting into again. And this involves NAD therapy, for example, um, PRP or platelet rich plasma therapy. And then now, especially here in Florida, stem cells have been approved to be used
I
for.
did not know that.
For orthopedics and for wound care, and for there's one other thing, there's three things. So we can use these stem cells to help if clients or patients have, degenerated joints, whether it's the knees, the ankles, the hips, whatever the case might be. And that may be due to a trauma a long time ago and maybe never doing anything about it, and just, it wears itself out even more, degenerates. Regenerative therapy is kind of like that lizard that his tail breaks off as a defense mechanism, but then he grows it back.
I see.
That's regenerative. That's the same thing. We can help regrow tendons and ligaments and muscles, and restore the health to joints, and different areas of the body.
And can our body do that no matter the age?
Yeah,
Is that possible?
it is
Like,
possible. But again, there's certain factors that we want to look at. Again, if you're alive, you can heal. Our ability to do that goes down because of the three things that we lose: growth hormone, NAD, and stem cells. Now, in theory, we can replace the NAD. We can add stem cells and we can improve the growth hormone. So it doesn't get much more anti-aging than that, which is really the biggest trend right now, I think, in healthcare. The whole anti-aging thing, and that's really where the peptides come into play. But there's more factors to it. So we can measure those things, and then we can address them, which I think is awesome.
wow, that's amazing. So, in your experience, I guess the next common question, if I was a client talking to you, would be,
How
how long
long can
does
you
it?
live?
How long? How
How long can you
long?
live?
No, but how
No.
long? Well, yes. How long can I live if I keep this lifestyle and I make these changes? Lives, because I think what you're talking is not just to check is, but also talked about lifestyle
Oh
changes.
yeah, big time.
Um, how long can I take to see results? Would I see them in 2 months? Would I see them in 6 weeks? Would
Mm.
I see them in 3 weeks? And once I see results and I start feeling much better,
Hmm.
people tend to stop doing what work well
And
until they
reverting
feel
back
back
to, yeah,
again, and
yeah,
then
yeah.
they get into that vicious circle. So the goal here of what we're trying to convey to our audience is, how can I have a lifestyle that can empower me to live a well-off life,
Yeah,
not just with financial confidence, but with health,
yeah,
confidence in my health for my future.
definitely. And we addressed it right off the bat, and that's that you always have to be checking the numbers. You can't run your blood work once and then do a plan for 3 months and then just assume that that's going to be what you need for the rest of your life. As we go through different things, as our lifestyle habits change, the needs that our body has also changes. So we are constantly assessing the blood work, and it's dynamic. The treatment plan is dynamic. For the next 3 months, this is what we're going to do. We should see these changes in your labs. You should be feeling this way. Once we accomplish those goals, you no longer need that support. Now we can move on to the next phase. For most people, we need to start with just simply reversing insulin resistance, getting their metabolism to work, helping their body to produce cells at a cellular level more efficiently. From there, the next step is then, okay, let's look at the hormones, let's look at the anti-aging, because if we start with all those things, not having that foundation is going to start to chip away at all the work that we're doing. So we need to start at the bottom, build a strong foundation, and then get to what I typically call like the icing on the cake stuff. The peptides and the stem cells, that's icing on the cake. We need to have an actual cake before we can put icing on it. So, and maybe talking about sugar like that is not great for this episode, but it's something people can relate to.
Of course.
um but yeah, it's really just constantly assessing. You have to always see where you are and kind of what changes, and we can't change things if we don't measure them.
I agree.
So having the labs and constantly sticking on those things, that's the key.
I agree. And in our practice, we kind of do the same thing. Clients do expect better results with their investments, their retirement, but we need to understand under the first basics, like starting from a budget, building their savings, building their wealth, and then making tactical changes to improve things. But nothing happens without knowing the data first.
Right.
Nothing.
Right.
So you work very similar to how
Yeah.
we manage things.
Yeah, like I assume you wouldn't tell somebody that doesn't have an emergency fund set up to start, putting money into the stock market. That could be a big risk. Yeah, it
Cor-
could be a big return, but you need to have that foundation
Correct.
first. So again, it's very, and the first time that we met, I was like, man, the financial health and our health, it's like the exact same play.
Tied to the hip.
You got to make sure that it's building from the ground up.
Yeah. And you're also a client of us. We help you
Yeah.
with your finances. So that's good. You're taking the first step. This has been great, Dr. Ray. Please stay tuned for our next episode because there's more that we have questions from our audience
Beautiful.
actually on some myths that we want to uncover.
Yes,
And I think you're
yes.
going to appreciate some of those questions. So I hope you enjoyed this episode of Well Beyond Numbers with Dr. Ray Tolmos. We're speaking about healthcare and your well being. Stay tuned for our next episode where we're going to talk about myths. We're going to uncover some myths on healthcare and things. We're going to be asking specific questions to Dr. Ray, see if we can uncover some of those. I'm your host, Dennis Coral from Coral Wealth Management, and this has been an episode of Well Beyond Numbers. Thank you very much.